Welcome back to AfricaCom 2018, where we are shaping Africa's digital future. With me is the practice leader at Ovum, that's Matt Reed. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Africa.
You were chairing the 5G stream, and I suppose
That's
the
right.
question that's on everybody's mind is why should African operators be investing in 5G?
Well, I think the thing with 5G is, it's notable that there are some early moves in Africa towards launching 5G. We're sort of on the cusp of some deployments on the continent. As to why, well, in fact, there are some niche applications that have relevance in Africa. So the first use case that we expect to see for 5G is fixed wireless broadband. Of course, as we know, fixed broadband penetration is very low on the continent, and there are some circumstances in which it could make sense to use 5G as a sort of alternative to fiber rollouts. So that's the main reason why we're seeing some activity now in 5G.
Because people would argue that we don't have enough people in Africa connected to 4G or 3G for that matter.
Yeah.
So therefore, the amount of capital investment, I would imagine, that goes into 5G, is it justifiable?
Well, I think the thing to bear in mind is that 5G will be for some quite niche markets and use cases for quite some time, to be honest. I mean, so the first use case, if you like, will be, as I mentioned, the fixed wireless broadband. Then, as the technology evolves, we'll see some other use cases become possible around what's termed massive IoT and applications involving very low latency. So these are things like autonomous vehicles, automation and virtualization in manufacturing and so on. But of course, these are not really sort of mass market services. These are going to be services for enterprises and perhaps big public organisations and so on. On the mobile side, of course, we will see some mobile 5G once the 5G capable smartphones become available, but that won't be until at the earliest second half of next year. But that will be small, for several years to come. But our forecasts say that in our forecasts we calculate that even by the end of 2023, which is the end of our 5-year forecast period, there will be still less than 6 million mobile 5G connections on the continent as a whole.
Oh wow! Why is that? I imagine connectivity is a major challenge. What are some of those obstacles that we'll need to get over?
Well, if we're looking at connectivity generally, yes. I mean, there are. I think it's important to note there's been big advances. So we have, for example, now more than 1 billion mobile connections on the continent. We passed that 1 billion landmark during last year, during 2017. Also, mobile broadband is growing pretty rapidly. When I say mobile broadband, I'm thinking of connections based on 3G and higher technology. So currently there is of those 1 billion or so mobile connections, around 43% of those are based on mobile broadband technologies. Although it's important to note that not necessarily all those connections will be active data users, but they have the capability to do so. And we're expecting that mobile broadband access to rise quite significantly over the coming few years. Particularly, there will be continued rollouts of 3G on the continent, but there will be more and more 4G LTE rollouts. So there will be particularly strong growth in that 4G LTE connectivity. But as I mentioned, it's a mixed picture. We're seeing a lot of progress, but at the same time, we do have to note that, for example, that I mentioned mobile broadband connectivity is something like 43%. However, the global average is around 70% at the moment. So even on mobile, Africa is still a little way behind the rest of the world. And in terms of fixed broadband, as I mentioned earlier, Africa is quite a long way behind the rest of the world. So according to our research, we we reckon that only about 7%, the fixed broadband household penetration figure for Africa is only about 7%.
Wow.
Which is substantially below most other world regions. Only Southern Asia is somewhat similar.
Yeah. Parting question from me. We need to be excited about emerging technologies. Which ones are you watching out for and you think are going to be disruptive in the next foreseeable future?
Yeah. Well, I mean, 5G, as it evolves, will be disruptive in a sense. As I mentioned, there's going to be sort of these new applications, new business models, and so on. But as we've discussed, there are some big problems around even basic connectivity on the continent. So I think that's an interesting area. I mean, there are various efforts to develop technologies that will address that problem. Some of them haven't really sort of taken off in the way that one might have thought. But if I just give you one example of one development fairly recently that I thought was quite interesting was that Alphabet, Alphabet being the parent company behind Google, but also has this Project Loon venture that I'm sure you know about, with the idea being that high altitude balloons will be used to bring internet connectivity to remote areas. So they signed their first deal in a partnership in Africa recently with Telkom Kenya. So that service is expected to go live early in 2019. So the aim of that is to bring connectivity to more remote and rural areas of Kenya which are currently not served by the existing networks.
Which is amazing. Which is absolutely amazing. Matt, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Pleasure. Thank you.